Hey, welcome back to Wicked Smart Golf, aka Wicked Smat. This is your host, Michael Leonard, and this podcast is committed to helping you play better golf without changing your swing. Really excited for today's guest, Sean Ogle. Sean and I have connected for about 6 years now, all the way back on my first podcast. He has done a lot in the entrepreneurship world and in the golf world. He is the founder of Breaking 80, among other online businesses. Sean, thanks so much for being here, man.
Dude, it's my pleasure. I think we just figured out it's been 6 years since our last call, which is wild.
Absolutely wild. Yeah, my first podcast, Inspire Your Success, August 28th, 2019. That was a different time for both of us. So
That was a different time
congrats.
for the entire world. So
That
that
is
was
the truth too. That's when no one played golf either. It was kind of nice because you could go to the range and practice facility and there was nobody there. Now it's just like lines everywhere. Golf has blown up.
that's what happened with like Breaking 80. I started it back in 2012 before anybody was actually golfing. And it's like 10 years later, okay, right place, right time.
Yeah, it's crazy, and you got in really early on it, and that's why I originally reached out on my other podcast, and I think your story is just super inspiring. So before we get into the golf stuff, man, a lot of my content really revolves around personal development and being the best version of yourself on and off the course, and I really think you've done a great job at that and take some risk and get out of your comfort zone. So you left your finance job in 2009 to what was kind of the next step? What was like the reason you wanted to get into online entrepreneurship?
Yeah, well, basically, I graduated with a finance degree in July of '07. And so, like, peak of the market, worst time to get into finance. I was like excited, like, day job, suit and tie, was like, oh, this is going to be it, like, whatever. And so by February of '09, the market had collapsed. I had gone to work for, it was basically a stockbroker that was opening up their own business. So my day one was the day that they started their business. And so they didn't have as many clients come over as they wanted. They were miserable. Clients were miserable. I was miserable. I ended up saving all my vacation time for the year to go to Rio for Carnival with my best friend. And so went down there for 2 weeks, like went hang gliding over the city. We danced in the Sambadrimo in the Carnival parade. We went down to like Iguazu Falls. Day I got back, got a 20% pay cut. And that's when I kind of realized like, all right, it's time to, make a change and figure something out. So ended up starting a blog, essentially documenting my quarter life crisis, May of '09. Had no clue what I was doing, but the thing that I kind of got known for in the early days was I published my bucket list. And it was like one of the first people to do that. So if you searched bucket list for years, I was like the first or second thing to show up. And so I finally, it was kind of a big series of events that happened, but I left my job October of that year and ended up moving to Thailand the next year and kind of saying, all right, let's go learn how to do this online marketing thing. Let's, take a chance and see what happens. And it all kind of worked out.
Dang, man, that is so cool. You were a trendsetter. I quit my job in 2017, May 11th. It's my second birthday. It's probably better than my birthday, to be honest with you. I always think of that day, but you were like 8 years ahead of me. So we appreciate you paving the way for people like myself that wanted to figure out how to do this. And that's a really cool story. And hopefully people can just use that for some inspo in their own life. I mean, you can get better at golf. You can start on, like, there's a lot of stuff you can do if you stick with it. So you've been at this obviously a while, and then you got into the golf side of things. So where did the passion for golf kind of merge with online business?
Yeah, so basically, I Location Rebel, the blog, which started kind of getting a little bit of an audience. I spent a year living in Thailand, kind of learning how to do online marketing, building up, kind of the idea of being a digital nomad and remote work, being able to work from anywhere. And I created a course in 2011 called Location Rebel Academy. And so we've now had like 5,000 people go through that course, teaching people mostly how to get to the point where they're making like $3,000 to $5,000 a month. Get you to the point where you have options so you can use that to build your confidence to figure out what's next. So that was all going really well. And then in 2012, I'd started playing golf when I was in college. So, it was a local course. I went to Oregon State University, Tristan Tree. I could play for 17 bucks for 18 holes. And that's how I started to play. So my entire childhood was competitive tennis, got burnt out on that, picked up golf. And after I got back from Thailand, like 2010, 2011, 2012, I started playing again and was getting really excited about it and passionate about it. And I decided to kind of create this stupid goal for myself of playing the top 100 public courses in the US. And in 2012 was kind of like, all right, well, I kind of know I've learned this online marketing thing. I'm pretty good at blogging. I have an idea of how to promote something. Let's apply it to something that I'm really passionate about, which was golf. And at the time, there really weren't any good golf blogs out there, and golf social media really didn't exist at the time.
Yeah.
So I was just like, you know what? I'm going to create the golf website that I would want to read. I'm going to use this, kind of in the same way I had my bucket list on my other site, like have a little bit of a quest behind it so people could get on board and follow along and that whole thing. And so I started traveling around playing all these, public golf courses. courses, and I was writing about them and taking photos of them and started to get a little bit of attention. And pretty quickly, I realized that if I'm doing all this traveling, for as cool as it is to play the public courses, like it would be, kind of nice to play the actual top 100
Hmm.
the US. And so I started that. And by 2014, I took a trip to Scotland and I realized I had played more of the top 100 in the world than I had in the US. So at that point, I'm just like, you know what? I just want to play cool golf courses with interesting people and share those stories. And so, that kind of became part of the Breaking 80, website and content was me trying to go after these 3 lists. And so that's kind of how it got started, where it was like learned a lot about SEO. I knew what I was doing with online marketing, building an email list, and kind of leaned into that. And then that morphed when I realized there's not many people that are searching for all of these, very high-end golf courses, but people are searching for, best golf rangefinders, best golf drivers, best
Yep.
golf bags. And so that's when I morphed the content from being predominantly travel to focusing on product reviews and helping people
Hmm.
find the right products for their needs. So now it's like 80% doing that, 20% travel, which is cool. I basically get to write about things that I'm excited about and passionate about, and kind of the site and the brand and everything have evolved from that because of it.
Where did the Breaking 80, was that just a lifelong quest? I know you have a cool story about the first time you did it. Was that just kind of went along with that bucket list?
Yeah, so that was early, like 2012. Had a friend in town. His name was Steve Cam. So he's got a website called Nerd Fitness, like huge fitness
Oh,
website.
dude, that's a great site. Yeah, I've used that a
Yeah,
ton.
so Steve's a big golfer, and so he was living in Portland at the time. So we went out and played golf, and we're like, man, we should start a golf website together. And so we were like having a beer afterwards, and we were just spitballing names, like golf names that would come up. And Breaking 80 was one of the ones that we
Hmm.
liked. And so we were going to start this site together. He had his own thing, decided that he had to focus on that, but he's like, you should run with it. And Breaking 80 with the number 80.com was taken. So I got it spelt out. So now
Hmm.
it's kind of one of those things that's part of the brand, but it's also like when people ask what you do, it's like, yep, I run the site called breaking80.com with 80 spelt out. So you got
Yep.
to always clarify that, which is a little annoying. But
That's
um,
funny.
yeah, when I started the site, hadn't broken 80. And then in 2016, so 3, 4 years later, I was at Bandon Dunes and was down there for 5 days. Trails is my favorite course at Bandon Dunes. Second to last day, I shoot a 93 at Trails and was like, okay. The next day, we had our choice of going to play Bandon Dunes, the original, or Trails again. And I was like, I can't leave shooting a 93 on my favorite course here. And so I went out, I bogeyed the first 2 holes, then made 7 pars in a row. On 12, I topped my drive. It was a 230-yard par 3, topped my drive, and then hole out from 50 yards for birdie. And I get to 18, and I think that I've like ruined it. I think I needed to make a birdie on 18 to shoot 79. Hit a good drive, and I'm standing in the middle of the fairway, and I remembered that Trails is a par 71 golf course and not par 72. So if I made a par, I'd break 80. And so I ended up having a 10-foot putt for 80 or for a 79, made it, and finally got to live up to my namesake, which was pretty cool.
That's an amazing memory to do it at such a cool course. I grew up, I don't know if I told you, in Grants Pass, so like 2.5 hours from there in
Oh, I
Bandon and
forgot
stuff.
that.
So
That's
yeah, so
awesome.
just a small world with how much we've kind of interconnected with business and location and stuff. Kind of funny, but I'm just curious with someone that's done so much. I mean, you took a lot of risk. Like I think that anyone that wants to be successful in business or in golf, you have to believe in yourself before anyone else does. So, like,
Yeah.
how would you say your business success has helped your golf game, and how can it help anyone's golf game? Like, just that believing in yourself. Like in my new book, Breaking 80 Consistently is the subtitle for you, and it's all about having that self image that you can do great things. So, how would you recommend people like? Just to start doing something that does feel terrifying or way out of your comfort zone, but you know that there is that potential that if this worked out, it'd be pretty cool.
Yeah. So there's this quote, I think it was originally by Tim Ferriss, but it was essentially most people will choose unhappiness over uncertainty. And
Mm,
so what I kind of say is like, 95% of people will just like stay away from uncertainty. Like that's scary. Like I want nothing to do with it. Then you get like a small percentage of people and they're going to overcome the uncertainty. So they're basically going to say, you know what? Like I'm scared of this. I'm going to do it anyway. And then you get a smaller fraction of people that embrace it and they look at it as uncertainty as an asset. And when uncertainty is an asset, you can make anything you want happen. And that's kind of where I think entrepreneurs thrive. And so for me, I basically said, all right, I want to change my life. I'm not happy. So I'm going to embrace this uncertainty and this idea of like, well, like I see something, I have this vision of something I want to create, so I'm going to go and create it. And
Hmm.
the reality is, and this is kind of cliche, but it's, what's the worst that's going to happen? And the reality is the worst case scenario is probably not as bad as you think it is. And the
Hmm.
chances of the worst case scenario actually happening are probably not as likely as you might think they are. So for me, when I quit my job, took a chance, moved to Thailand, I was like, all right, well, worst case scenario, that doesn't work out. I have an awesome adventure for 6 months. I come back and I go work at McDonald's while I figure out what my next step is. And obviously that didn't happen, but kind of taking that mindset and realizing it's like, for instance, if you're listening to this podcast, you're probably a fairly smart, capable person. So it's like you're gonna figure things out if you just kind of have the right attitude. And
Hmm.
that's just like mental game and golf. Attitude is everything. And so, I've always had a pretty positive outlook on life. And I think that is a big part of why I've been, as successful as I've been.
Yeah, that's great, man. Like I said, your story inspires me, so I know it'll inspire a ton of people. And you've done, like I said, like a lot with Breaking 80. You're still growing that site, which we'll get into. And then you also started the 80 Club in 2016. Tell us more about that because I think that's really cool because travel and golf are such a big part of the game together.
Yeah. So what was happening was, I had this goal to play the top 100 courses, and I was getting, these people who would email me that found the site, and they're like, "Hey, I'm a member of such and such club. I want to help you, on your quest. So let me know next time you're in New York or wherever you are."
Hmm.
And so I start building up this network of people that were members at really cool places. They like to show off their courses to people that would appreciate it. It's
That's
like people
true.
are really proud of their home clubs. And that's, I know me being a member at a cool club, like that's one of my favorite things is taking people out that haven't seen the course before. They
Hmm.
like to travel, experience other courses themselves, and they like to geek out about golf on the internet. And so this was before there were a lot of the golf societies that are out there now. It was before Thousand Greens was a thing. And so I was like, these people should know each other. And there's got to be a way to connect these people and maybe turn it into a little bit of a business for myself. And so I ended up emailing 20 people that I thought might be into it. All 20 of them said, yeah, like I'd love to be a part of it. So we created an online forum and started building this kind of community of people. And a couple months after that was like, all right, well, this is, pretty cool. Let's open it up to, more people. And so basically had like kind of a founding members, fee. And, I had 2 Instagram posts over the course of 2 days. And in 48 hours, we had over 50 applications for people to join.
That's
And so
wild.
yeah, so now we've got just shy of 250 members, all over the world at really cool places. We do a handful of events a year, but at its heart, it's just an online forum of people that love to geek out about golf and,
Hmm.
kind of share this thing that we're all passionate about. So it's been one of my favorite things that is kind of happened because of Breaking 80.
Yeah, yeah, like you had no idea that was going to happen when you started breaking
No
82,
clue.
which is just so cool. And when just to clarify too, like if you're a member then at a private club, you join and then you're part of is it like a reciprocal thing or like what is, I don't know the exact ins and outs of it just for people that are maybe listening and are at a private club and want to learn more.
Totally. So, you have to be a private club, be a member to private club to be a member. There's no obligation to host anybody. It's just the
Mm,
idea that you're open to it. So if someone's
yeah.
in town and, wants to get together, it's like you're at least open to the idea of having another member out. But for the most part, it's people that are, again into the events, but a lot of it is like, okay, you're sitting at home like on a Tuesday in February, you can't play golf, you want to know that there's other people out there that are thinking the same things you are. So we've got a pretty active community of people just talking about everything from what's the best equipment, like where should I go on this trip, do you have
Mm,
connections in any of these cities I'm going to visit, would you rather go play this course or this course. So it's just a lot of like fun, interesting conversations. And so we don't do anything with the clubs themselves, it's all just through members.
mhm.
And it's worked out pretty well. So I think the key is getting the right people that have the same outlook as you. As soon as you start getting the wrong people that are in it for the wrong reasons, that are only trying to get access to clubs or whatever,
Mm,
everything falls apart and it's never going to work. But what I always kind of say is this is about relationships first and golf second. And so as long as you're building relationships with the right people, then you're gonna have a good crew. And so that's been something I feel very fortunate to have created and have with the 80 Club.
that's awesome. What are some of the fun courses you've got the chance to play or meet up with some members? Got any good stories there?
Yeah, I mean, we've we've hosted events all over the place. So we used to do a Ryder Cup style event at Mid Ocean Club. So we have some Mid Ocean
Nice.
members, and so we do like 8v8, Mid Ocean guys versus the guys coming in from the states. We did a 3-day event at Oak Hill. So this was right before they had the PGA Championship there, and they just built some cottages on property, so we got to go stay on property there. We've done
Nice.
Boston Golf Club and Old Sandwich. We did a Bandon Dunes trip. We've done Prairie Dunes. We've got Ballyneal coming up, in a couple months. So some really cool spots all over the country.
That's so cool. And so, where are you at with the top 100 in the USA and then the world? What do you have a timeline on that as well?
Yeah. So I think I started this when I was like 28, something like that, maybe even younger. And I was trying to figure out what the youngest person to do the top 100 in
Mm.
America was. And my kind of loose goal was 35. And then I realized, okay, well, that's not going to happen. I think I'm at like 57 or 58 in the US and like 54, 55 in the world. And so, it's something that has not been as much of a priority over the last few years. Honestly, like in the golf world, there's certainly a stigma with people that are, list checkers or don't actually care about the courses. They're just trying to tick boxes. And, that's not how I feel about it. I feel like I'm doing it for the right reasons. I want to meet cool people and see new places and broaden my, understanding of the game and architecture and history. But I don't talk about it quite as much on the website as I used to. It's kind of become much more of a personal goal for myself as opposed to something that I'm doing overly publicly. But some of my best memories are from that adventure and these people that I meet and this, the courses that I get to play that just never would have happened had I not just said, all right, well, this sounds cool. Let's try it and see where it goes. So that's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's amazing the people you meet in golf. Like he just never really, you're like one tee time away from getting paired up with somebody that you're like, wait, how? Like I just had J.R. Smith, like my Instagram post yesterday. I'm like, J.R. Smith, he's won like a bunch of, he played with LeBron, Like you just never know who loves golf, and it's fun to kind of interact with people. Do you have any crazy stories of anyone you've ran into or met in the golf world?
Yeah, I mean that's one things that's so cool about golf is it is such a small world, and it's kind of like not the great equalizer, but kind of because it doesn't matter if you're a celebrity or a Fortune 500
Mm-hmm.
CEO or a college kid. It's like everybody can hang out with everybody,
Mm-hmm.
and that's pretty cool. But I think the story that sticks out the most to me was I was playing Pebble Beach for the first time. And so we had a 6:50 tee time. We're third ones out,
That is
played in.
early, by the way.
Yeah, but we played in 4 hours. So I
That's
never got
impressive.
any of the
Yeah.
like, 6 hour wait, everything's miserable. And so we're in the bar afterwards. We're kind of sitting in the back. We're just geeking out over the fact that we just played Pebble Beach. And these three guys come and sit down next to us and not paying any attention to who they are because we're geeking out over, Pebble Beach.
Sure.
And I overhear one of them say, he's like, yeah, I'm getting ready to go to Scotland in a few weeks. I'm trying to decide if it's worth going all the way up north to Royal Dornoch. And so Royal Dornoch is like a top 10, top 20 course in the world. And at the time, it was my favorite course I'd ever played. So like, as you do at a golf course, I instinctively turned to interrupt him and be like, dude, if you're going to Dornoch or if you're going to Scotland, you've got to go to Dornoch. It's amazing. And as I'm turning to interrupt this conversation, I realized it was Steph Curry. And he was with the two owners of the Warriors. And it was their like celebratory round after winning the 2015 championship. And
Wow.
so we had like a, 10-minute conversation about golf in Scotland and courses and nicest guy imaginable. And I think he said he shot his 71 that day. So he's one of those people that's
Nice.
just kind of good at everything that you love to hate.
He's a stick. Yeah, I think he's right around scratch or better. I mean, he does those celebrity tournaments, and I mean, he makes it look really easy.
Totally. So,
Wow,
so
that's
yeah, so
cool.
there's certainly been
What a
some
perfect day at Pebble, by the way. I mean, I love Pebble, and then to have that ending. Oof.
Oh my God. It could not have been like that whole day. There's like a longer part of the story of some of the stuff that happened after that that's also memorable, but we'll save that for another time. It
Okay,
was cool.
what were some of your highlights from Pebble? That course kind of changed my life. That's when I decided to quit my job when after I played there and like get into entrepreneurship and stuff. I was like, man, I just love golf so much. I got to figure out a way to be more invested. What were some of your favorite memories from arguably one
I,
of the most biggest bucket list courses for everybody?
yeah. So I think the thing that sticks out the most is how it makes you feel.
Mm.
There's only a handful of courses in the world where you play them and you're oh my God, like the sense of occasion is greater than anything else. So it's like that, the old course at St. Andrews. And for me, those are Those are kind of the two. There's other ones that are up there, playing like iconic holes, like playing 17 at Sawgrass. Like,
Hmm.
that's another one that kind of sticks out. But Pebble, like throughout the entire round, it's like, at least I know the course so well. I know
Oh yeah.
every hole, whether it's from watching it on TV, playing Tiger Woods, like whatever it is. And, you get to all these moments where it's like you get to your tee shot on 6 and you've got one of the most unique par fives in the world. And then you
So
get to
good.
number 7 and you're like, well, like this is even crazier. And then you get to like your approach shot on 8, which might be one of the best approach shots in the world. And it's like every hole, there's something interesting and memorable. And
Hmm.
so that moment stuck with me for a very long time. And playing that was kind of like, yes, like that's one of the reasons why I, I I'm still so interested in this quest is it's fascinating to play all these courses because they are all so different from one another. That's, I
Hmm.
think, one of the cool things about golf. It's like if you go play tennis, a tennis court's a tennis court no matter where you go. But golf, you can play it in the like on the beach, you can play it in the mountains, you can play it in the desert, you can play it in the forest, and it's going to be a
Hmm.
wildly different experience. And getting to see different courses all over the world and what those look like and play like and feel like, I just that's so much fun to me. And so Pebble, I feel like is kind of the epitome of all of that, where you've got one of the most beautiful courses in the world, one of the most historic courses in the world. And so it's basically impossible to play it and not have some sort of kind of core memory.
Yeah, you encapsulated that memory perfect. I just had a Pebble Beach caddy on the show a couple of weeks ago, and I was just like, "How do you get to caddy there? That has to feel like weird, you're like part of history every day, like just being there." So I'm
What
glad you
about,
had such a good experience too.
yeah, what about you? Was there a moment when you were playing the course that sticks out as like, this is
Man,
what did it for me?
I think it was on 6 too, because Tiger obviously he's the reason I play golf and just got in, fell in love with it. And I'll just never forget that. Was it 6 iron he hit over the tree from the deepest rough, down by the ocean, over the tree, over the hill, onto the green, and you're just like, how does anyone hit that shot? And I didn't
Yeah.
hit that cool of a shot, but my swing was pretty terrible. I have all these videos from these grainy iPhone 6s or whatever we were using back then, and I remember I hit just the perfect shot. I walked after it. I was like, be the club. Like, I mean, it was like a highlight reel memory for me. It almost got there, and then I got up and down for birdie. So it was pretty cool. And then on 7, I hit on the fringe, and I got humbled on 8. That second shot, went long, and then you're chipping straight downhill. There's just nothing there. So I love those stretch of holes right there. And like you said, it's like Tiger walked there, Jack walked there. Like you're just part of history, but the holes themselves are so good. And then the greens are like the size of your table. Like you don't
Yeah,
even
totally.
like people have no idea how tiny those things are. And having the caddy always just makes it cool too. So you're kind of feeding off him for the read, and it's just like you said, there's a lot of history to it. That I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of cool courses out there that you've played, but I don't think any of them have like that the way you feel. I think you did even when you pull into a 17-mile drive, like you just feel like, oh man, this is gonna be good.
Yeah, 100%. And so that's, people ask
Yeah,
me a lot, like, what's your favorite course you played? And to this
yeah,
day, it's still Pebble Beach. But I haven't
yeah.
played Cypress Point yet. So I have a feeling
Okay,
that might take the cake whenever we get there. But
that's fair.
I love Pebble.
I love it. That's so cool, man. Well, let's talk about breaking 82 because one of the pillars of playing wicked smart golf is to make sure you're practicing the right way. Because let's get real,
Yeah.
most people are exercising, they're not practicing, and
Yeah.
golf is stupid because you can practice but actually get a lot worse. And so I'm a big fan of training aids and using gadgets and stuff like that that are good. And I think I read on your site you've done over 200 product reviews and probably more than that now. I mean, I know I've kind of done a lot with that too. So what are some of the products? Like I had a few here that I found from your site that you said you like. First off is Arccos. So what do you like about the Arccos sensors, and how do you think that can help golfers?
Yeah, so there's a few things I like about Arccos. I mean, first off, you're able to get tour level statistics,
Hmm.
like anybody can do it. The fact that that's even possible is mind blowing. And
Yeah.
so, for people that aren't familiar with Arccos, there's sensors you put on your clubs. It pairs with your phone, and then it gets, uses GPS to get data around every single shot that you hit.
Hmm.
So it's going to know exactly how far your drive was. It's going to know whether or not you missed the fairway or not. It's going to know if you were in the bunker. So you're able to get strokes gain, statistics for every single part of your game. And then you can go back and you can see every single shot that you hit on the golf course. And so that for me, not only is it interesting to get all the practice data, and
Hmm.
Arccos actually does a good job of saying, hey, for instance, we notice you miss, a lot of putts between 10 and 25 feet. You're not very good
Yeah.
there. Here's what you can do to improve that.
Hmm.
And so I like the way that they kind of build all of that into the system. But for me, being able to go and who travels a lot, being able to go back and relive some of those moments
Oh, that's
is
true.
is kind of one of the coolest things about it. So for instance, I can go back in my Arccos and I can see that on the road hole at St. Andrews, I went driver, top 3 wood, 8 iron, and then made a 20-foot putt for par. And so I can go
You got
back
some
and I can
iconic stuff after a top happens. I just expect you to hit good
I
shots
know.
after that.
And I can go back, I can see the par that I made on a 17 at Sawgrass. The
Mm.
best shot I've ever hit was at a course called Champions Retreat outside Augusta. And we were there for Masters Week. Par 5. This is another top shot story. Hit a good drive, top my second shot, and then hold out from 165 for eagle.
Wow.
And so in Arccos has all that. So I can go back and I can see exactly what hole and all the data. And so I think that that's, not only are all the statistics great and useful on a day-to-day basis, but I kind of use it as like a travel blog of sorts
Mm.
of, all of the golf courses that I've played.
I never would have thought about that. That's so true. Yeah, because I mean, I had Lou Stagner on last year, telling us all about it and geeking out on all the strokes gained and stats and stuff, and how we're not very good compared to what we think we should be. And so
Yeah.
I love the dashboard and stuff. But the travel log is a great idea because I always tell everyone to write down as many good shots as you can remember, just to store them in your mind, because we always want to remember all the top shots. But if you can get to write down the good ones, but damn, that makes it pretty easy if you have those. And so do you pretty much use those every round?
I wish I were. So usually when I travel, I'll play with them. The problem with what I do is I review golf products for a living. So a
Mm.
lot of the time when I'm going out to play, I'm
Sure.
either, really focused on the review.
Yeah.
I'm not playing a full 18 holes or even a full 9 holes. I'm filming content. That's the tough part with travel is now when I'm, playing interesting courses, I'm
Mhm.
not only trying to photograph them to, do blog posts, but now I'm also doing YouTube. So you're trying to film it, which really that's when,
It's
things get
very hard. People don't realize how hard it is. I'm like winded when I'm at the simulator, like trying to go through a video, and that's like, and when you're on the course, and you got wind and sound. It's a lot more work than people realize.
Totally. So when I'm serious about doing a YouTube video about a course or resort, then I'm
Mhm.
usually not actually playing a full round. It's like I'm hitting shots, but I'm not keeping score.
Yeah.
So it makes it more difficult to do Arccos then. But I've played over 360 rounds with it over the last 10 years.
Nice.
So
Okay.
there's a lot of data in there, and I can see just how much worse that I've gotten over the last few years. So
Well,
uh,
from what we've talked about, it sounds like you have a lot going on here. So we'll talk more about your schedule here in a second because I'm curious to know what that looks like. What are some other products? I know you mentioned Flight Scope. I think that launch monitors are great for players, but I think sometimes they get like more information is too much. It's not always like a
totally.
better thing. So I know you've reviewed probably a lot more and tested out a lot more launch monitors. So what's your take on personal launch monitors for golfers? Who should use them? How can you use them best? Any tips like that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is understanding why you want it. Is it just because you get bored on the driving range and you want to make it more fun?
Hmm.
Great. You can get a, $300 product that's not necessarily going to be the most accurate, but it's going to allow you to play some games, mix it up a little
Hmm.
bit, and maybe, get you so that you're practicing a little bit longer than you would otherwise. Is it because you just want to play simulator golf? Like you just want to like set up a simulator at home?
Hmm.
That's going to dictate, what the right product is for you. Or is it because you really are a data nerd and you want all that data and you want to dig into the statistics? And so I think understanding what data you want and why you want it is important, especially that last part,
Hmm.
because you can go and you can use any different launch monitor and it's going to give you, a dozen plus different metrics that most people aren't going to completely understand. Even myself, I get into some of these metrics. I was
Oh
like, I
yeah.
don't entirely know what this does or what the point is.
Hmm.
But if you can say, all right, I'm working on, one aspect of my game, maybe it's like improving club head speed or something. So it's like, okay, like that's what I'm going to be focusing on while I'm practicing. Or maybe you're trying to improve your angle of attack. So it's like,
Hmm.
okay, I'm just going to be focusing on like my parameters, trying to get that between like -1 and 1 degree or whatever it might be. And so I think launch monitors are great for all of those things, but you need to understand why you need it, what your goal is with it, and
Hmm.
then recognize you don't necessarily need to spend a ton of money because you're not a tour pro. Chances are it's like you don't need a $20,000 GC quad to get 98% of the benefit that you would get from a device that costs a fraction of as much.
Yeah, I try and share with the audience like what the PGA show is like. I mean, it's just insane. Like, there's just so much stuff going on. How many years have you been to it now? Because I mean, the gear is just each year. I'm just like, I don't know how it's going to fit one year in that place.
Yeah, I've been probably 6 or 7 times. I think I went
Okay.
like 2015 to 2020, and then I didn't go again until last year. So it took a few years off from COVID. 2 years ago, I was going to go, and then I got invited to Bandon Dunes at the last minute, and was like, we'll
That's
do
fair.
that. And then I was kind of like, okay, like we've gotten to the point where I really need to be there. I'm not gonna say I
Hmm.
regret going to Bandon Dunes, but now it's kind of one of those things that's
Yeah,
can't be missed each year.
totally. What any new things you saw this year that you were thinking like, wow, that could help a lot of golfers?
Um, I'm curious to see, and I just got some of these devices to start testing. Um, so one of the things we're seeing with rangefinders is, over the last few years, we've seen smart rangefinders. So
Hmm.
rangefinders that are built in like GPS, so you can get data to the front, center, back of the green, along with actually getting, laser distance to the flag. Well, now we're seeing a couple brands, specifically Bushnell Foresight and FlightScope, so launch monitor companies that are basically saying, we're going to take your actual launch monitor data, and then we're going to take all the data we have on the exact course you're playing, conditions, elevation, wind, altitude, slope, all of that. And we're going to take all that into account. And then we're going to give you a club recommendation based on what we know about your shot from your launch monitor data
Wow.
and the course that you're playing now. And so, um, you know, Foresight with their GC3 and GC3S, they have it's called the Bushnell Pro X3 Link. So
Hmm.
that's always been for the last, 3-4 years. That's Bushnell's flagship rangefinder. It's arguably, the best out there. But now it has this capability to connect with that launch monitor data, and it's going to give you club recommendations. FlightScope just rolled out at the PGA Show. Their i4 rangefinder essentially does the same thing, except with your FlightScope data. So I'm
Hmm.
curious to see if those actually work very well, how accurate the numbers they give are, or is it just kind of one of those things where it's like, well, if you're a golfer, you should know that if you're 160 yards out, you should hit a 6 iron or 7 iron, whatever it might be. Um, but when you're taking into account all those extra variables, wind, altitude, temperature,
Hmm.
all those things, how useful are these features? So that's,
Hmm.
I think, the thing that sticks out as kind of one of the cooler tech innovations. I'm curious to see if it actually works.
Yeah, that's fascinating. I finally just got a real Bushnell rangefinder this year because I've been rocking like a $60 one from Amazon, and I'm like, everybody
Moving
giving
up
me
in the
shit.
world.
Everybody's giving me shit about it. I'm like, I don't know. I've gotten here. I guess it's not the end of the world. I was like, I'm not good enough to control 3 yards of distance, guys, but I appreciate your belief in me. But Bushnell hooked it up this year, so I'm excited to finally feel like I have a little more of a clue on my distances.
Nice.
And like I said, the Arccos is really good. We talked about putting mats a little before we hit record too, because the third pillar of Wicked Smart is making sure you're practicing your putting. And let's get real, most people get bored or they don't want to do it, or when they go to the golf course, they want to work on that. Maybe they're chipping, but putting really gets not a lot of love. But it's the one thing you can do pretty easily at home. So, what are some of your favorite putting mats, and how do you recommend players maybe using those to benefit their short game?
Yeah, that's what people like all the time. All of friends are like, okay, I'm trying to get better at golf. I was like, the best news is the easiest thing to practice is the thing that is going to have the best opportunity to lower your scores. It's like get
Hmm.
a putting mat and just like when you're bored, just go do that. So
Yep.
similar to you, I think you said you have a prime putt mat. That's of all
Yeah.
the ones I've tested, that is the highest quality, the most realistic. Been very impressed with those. Also, there's a system, it's called the putter, Puttr. So as someone who gets bored fairly easily, with practicing, this is like the perfect thing for me. So it's basically this metal box, and you roll out. It's an 11-foot mat, and
Okay.
then it connects to. It's got cameras built in, connects to your iPad and their app to essentially track every single putt that you hit. So you can watch, like on the iPad, you can watch the trajectory of where the ball goes, and if it goes in the hole or if it goes past it. And then there's dozens of different games and modes you can do to
Hmm.
practice your game. So there's 27 different spots. There's a left, center, and right spot from 3 feet back to 11 feet. And so,
Okay.
like, for instance, one of the games you can play is if you've got a buddy, you can play horse. So it's like, okay, I'm going like 7 left. And if I make it and they don't, then they get an H. You can
Mm.
also play, online. They've got an online leaderboard. So even though it's not the most realistic putting mat, it's the most fun putting mat.
Okay. Yeah.
And so that's what I find myself using more because it keeps me more engaged, or I'm trying to, break my record for how many 4-foot putts I can make in a row or whatever it
Hmm.
might be. So that's been another kind of cool tech evolution.
I like that. What have you tried what is it, the air brake?
I
The
have not.
Okay. Yeah, I got that one.
I've
That one's
heard good things
that's
about it,
pretty
but I haven't
cool. I
tried
mean,
one
to
yet.
have the airbags, because like 90% of putts aren't straight. So that's like the one problem with putting mats
Which
and
and that's
stuff.
good because I've tested ones that come with like almost like styrofoam inserts that you like put
Uh
under the mat to
I
simulate a break,
hated that. I did the
and
same thing, man.
those are terrible.
They just ended up in my closet and I never used them. And then I'm like, the mat wasn't good. And I'm like, I'm not gonna put these underneath. It's just clunky. Like it got to be easy to use or you're not going to use it.
100%. But the air brake, I was kind of curious. I was like, okay, this seems like it might be a
Yeah.
better, example of doing this. But
You
like I
got to
said, I haven't
stand
tried
on a
it out yet.
platform and you're just a little further away from the ball than I would normally stand, I feel like. But other than that, it's pretty solid. I mean, it is cool to practice uphill, downhill, and it does have
Yeah.
the ball return and stuff. But yeah, I think the prime putt just looks clean. Like you could leave that out. And I have a corgi who sheds like crazy, and some reason that turf doesn't actually take it. So that's good because all the like cheap putting mats are pretty much Munchie's putting mat after about a month. So
Totally. Awesome.
awesome, man. What about other just to kind of before we finish up here, any other golf gadgets? I know, like you said, that you've done a lot. We got Arccos, we got launch monitors slash simulators, putting mats. Anything else you think that the everyday golfer, maybe 14 or below, could really benefit from in terms of course management, practice, or anything else in your extensive experience at this point?
For sure. One of the things that comes to mind for me, just because I use it every single day, is a golf watch.
Mm.
So it's like if you're someone you're like, I don't need a laser rangefinder. I don't need to know down to the 10th of a yard, how far things are away. But I've gone kind of all in on Garmin. I switched from an
Mm.
Apple Watch to being a Garmin user as I'm just trying to like track my health and fitness and sleep.
Mm.
And, so having a GPS watch like that also potentially has all sorts of other, health features and health benefits. I found that to have a pretty significant impact to my life. And if you don't need all those extra health features and you just want,
Mm.
a GPS watch that works and gives you accurate yardages, you can spend like $100 and be totally fine and get a solid product. So that's one thing that, comes to mind just because that's something that I use all the time. Also there's devices out there for actually helping you with swing mechanics that I think are pretty interesting. So, there's one called the DeWiz, there's one
Oh
called
yeah,
Hack Motion.
yeah.
Which I think that if those kind of
But
fit
let's go
in,
over those real quick because those are very different things. So the hack or the DeWiz, when I got it, because you can like shock yourself, which I don't know if
yeah,
you've used that feature. So
yes.
those of you guys that don't know, it's like my dog growing up. If she left the yard, like she'd get a shock, like which is weird. We did the shock collar thing 20 years ago. I'd never do that now, but it's what I felt like. Like if you get too far inside or your tempo gets too quick, you can put a parameter on it to shock you, which is kind of terrifying. You're like on the range next to people and you're like feel like you're having a seizure
Oh.
out there. Did you have the same experience or was that just me?
No, I definitely had kind of the same experience. But it's also one of those things. It does kind of work, but it was funny because I wrote my review and you could
Hmm.
tell that they've shifted their marketing a little bit from, golf shot collar to, different types of, reinforcement and feedback. So I think I
Sure.
changed some of the verbiage, but
Well, that's why
um
we need people like you. Honest reviews out there.
there you go. But honestly, like it works pretty well. The app is clean.
Hmm.
It's a good user experience.
Yeah.
And then, the hack motion is, similar but different in
Hmm.
terms of it's trying to help you kind of get the right swing motion. And it focuses more on wrist flexion and making sure that your wrists are in the right position during your swing. And so there's also reinforcement where for that one, instead of a shock, it'll basically give you like an audible noise. It'll be like, in the app. So
Hmm.
it's like as long as your wrist is in the correct position, it'll make that noise, kind of training you to kind of find that position. But
Hmm.
both of those, I've found to be, solid. Like they continue to improve the app with both of them, which has been really nice. So if you're trying to actually really work on your swing,
Hmm.
I think those are two things that may be able to help some people.
Yeah.
Um,
Have you done any speed
and
training?
I've not. It's one of those things. I've lost a lot of speed over the years, and so it's what
Hmm.
I should be doing is kind of getting back into it. I'm
Yeah.
trying to get a proper swing before I speed anything up.
The thing is, though,
um,
is that a lot of times a faster swing will help with the sequencing. I've had a lot of people like, "Oh, I got to wait until I get a good swing," and then they'll try like Ripstick, and then they're like sequencing or Tour Tempo app. I don't know if you've used that one
yeah,
too, but it kind of improves because like you're sometimes you're thinking too much and you're like trying to go through the motions and feel it, but a lot of times a little smoother. I don't want to say faster, but I mean technically the club head speed is going to be faster. But yeah, I think you might really geek out on that stuff because I've had two guys I interviewed that added 40 yards and they're in their 50s.
wow,
Yeah, so I
that's
mean it's
crazy.
it's and they didn't have conventional like perfect swings by any means. One of them had pretty bad knee injury too,
Yeah,
and he did it. And they have like senior models, not that you're there yet, but they have junior women, they have everything, which is kind of cool. But yeah, we've had a lot of success with students over here. So if you need something new to review, I think you'd enjoy that.
Very cool. Check it out for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah, cool, man. Well, before getting to the last question, what's the best place to connect? I know you got a lot of cool stuff going on. I want to make sure everyone follows you and maybe joins some of your different stuff that you have.
Yeah. I mean, the easiest thing is go to breaking80.com with 80 spelt out.
Breaking 80 spelled out.
That's kind of the hub for everything, but you can find me at breaking80 on Instagram, and youtube.com/breaking80. So, that's kind of the big thing that I've leaned into over the last couple of years is the video content and the YouTube channel. And so, I had this like weird realization. It's like I started my first blog in 2009. I've always been, for lack of a better term, a blogger. And at some point in the last year, I had this realization where it's like, am I YouTuber now? Is that my thing? And, I think that's been one of the keys to success over the last few years is, we generally do both written and video content for the reviews and the content we create, which I think we do a pretty good job of both. So it's been fun to kind of see all of that grow. But you can go to any of those places or Sean at breaking80.com if you want to shoot me an email. That's I'm in all of those places.
I love it. I love it. That's great. And I actually kind of was in the same boat because I got an influencer badge at the PGA show, and I was like, "Ugh, like I don't ever want. I'm a mental coach, a writer. Just don't call me the influencer. Like I have skills that I'm trying to help people with." But yeah, that's a weird one. And then the YouTuber too. I guess I'm a podcaster, so I get it. And your YouTube's great, by the way. So nice job because you have so much going on. And that's actually kind of the last question I wanted to ask you about is how do you manage your time so well? Because I think that most players want to get better, but they have their family, they got, jobs, they got to go to the gym, they got stuff outside of work. You're obviously a master at time management, or you've figured out a lot over the years. I think as an entrepreneur, you kind of have to. So any time management tips you can tell the audience to help them, hopefully maybe reclaim some time and use it to their golf game.
So unfortunately, I am actually terrible at time management. It's all a facade. I'm being very honest. I have the benefit. I've been doing this a really long time. So it's like, I've got hundreds of pieces of content on the website. So, it seems like oftentimes it seems like there's more there than it is. So it's
Don't
like,
sell yourself short. You got YouTube, you got a couple businesses.
Yeah, so
Come on.
Location Rebel, my initial business, I just told you as of like 2 weeks ago, I shut it down. After 14 years, finally was like, okay, like I need to focus and be able to spend my time more effectively because when you're spread, too thin, you're just not doing anything justice. And so finally I was like, you know what, it's time to go all in on the golf stuff. This is where my passion is. This is where I feel like I'm able to have the most impact these days. But, I guess the short answer would be I try and batch my videos as much as possible. So it's like sit down, do that, try and be consistent with getting 2 videos out a week, and then doing my best just to kind of fill in the gaps. But it's a blessing and a curse being a one-man show where I've got, a couple people that help me with a few different things. But, as the site has grown, I've been at a point where, I'll say yes to things and drop the ball where it's like, yeah, I'm happy to check out that product. And then 4 months later, I still haven't reviewed it. And so I want to get to the point where I'm not dropping balls and seeming like the flakiest person ever, because right now I feel like I'm still putting stuff out there. I'm still getting stuff done. But what people don't see are all the balls that are getting dropped, in the background. And I guess, you could just say that the most important stuff gets done, but I don't know. I feel like there's some pretty important things that have been hanging over my head that I still haven't pushed over the edge. So it's a balancing act. But
yeah, well, I mean, you're doing a great job of it, and so I just want to give you a lot of credit because, like we said, people see the after product, they see all the success, but it's a lot of work, and so I know it. You've inspired me, and I appreciate you being on 2 different of my podcasts now, which is pretty cool. So I guess we'll do a second last question. Any big golf goals or trips you got coming up that you're super excited about?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm going to Vietnam next month on a golf trip, which I'm really excited about. So going with my dad. So on that original bucket list from 2009, I had taken an international trip with my mom and taken an international trip with my dad. And 16 years later, I still haven't done that. So me and my dad are going to go to Vietnam on a golf trip. We're going to play 4 or 5 rounds out there. And I'm taking my mom to London this summer because that's where her bucket list thing, which is going to be cool. So yeah, the Ballynail trip that's coming up. Got some courses over in Bend I'm going to go play here in Central Oregon, which I'm excited about.
Sun River's my favorite place ever. So yeah.
Mine too. Like Sun River, and if people go see my content, it's like it's someday I will own a house in Sun River. I'll be a member at Crosswater.
I was
I
gonna say we're
absolutely
gonna
love
be
that
neighbors
place.
because Crosswater is the goal. I want to be right on 12. I like that par. That par five is like 650 yards.
687 yards from the tips.
687. You're right. That's what
Yeah.
it is.
That when that
Oh,
course was built, it was the longest course in the country. It was like 7,700 yards. And
wow.
that was in 95. And now you
Uh-huh.
look at how many courses are able to be stretched out over that. It just kind of shows you how much the game has shifted for positive or negative.
Dang. Yeah. Well, I'm wishing you nothing but success, man. No doubt you'll get all those goals and a lot more. Appreciate you sharing so much with the audience, and we'll make sure to link to everything down below.
Dude, it's my pleasure. Thanks for having me.